Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, January 17th, 2017 meeting of the Merrimack School Board. If you could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Just a little housekeeping. First, Mike Thompson is joining us via telephone. And prior to our meeting, we tested the lines, and he could hear all of us contemporaneously and could respond and participate fluidly. That being said, if there is a vote to be had by the board tonight, which we expect there will be a couple, they will all have to be done via roll call vote. With that, we will go on to item... Oh, yes. I'm sorry, Mike, I forgot to ask you some simple questions. Mike, if you could please explain where you are and who is with you.
I am south of Bangor, Maine in their car, and I have Joe DiMaggio with me, with a coworker.
Okay. And so you are in the car and will be, I guess, joining us cellularly. So far, everything is going well. If for any reason you need to drop off because you lose contact, then we will continue meeting, to continue the process, okay? I make no guarantees for main towers, so. Okay, so thank you for the housekeeping on that. And then, so we're on to item number 2, which is public participation. If anyone from the public would like to come to the mic, say their name for the record and address. Seeing none, we will close public participation. And we're going on to item number 3, which is a quarterly curriculum review with Dr. Mark McLaughlin.
Thank you very much. So I look forward to these opportunities to provide the board with an update about the various goings-on in our district. And tonight, I've kind of expanded the definition of curriculum review to talk to you about some curriculum initiatives, but really a little bit more broadly about some other things that we're doing that really have ties to curriculum and to provide sort of a fuller picture of what we're doing in the district. And that's largely a result of some conversations that we've had internally with our leadership team and really even with the board, wanting to make sure that our public and the board really understand, a lot of the activity that happens in our district, a lot of it which happens sort of behind the scenes, but that has, pretty important impact in the classroom and in our schools. And so this is in that spirit of trying to really provide some good detailed information. So I'm going to just pass out to you now a summary of district initiatives as of January 2017. And with your indulgence, I'm just going to kind of go through it and provide you just a little bit of the backstory about each of these things and to the extent that they interrelate, how they interrelate. So I'll just wait until all members have a copy. So what you have in front of you is a document that at the top of it, it's reading across, it says initiative, the purpose of the initiative, implication of the initiative, a timeline of the initiative, and the context. And I would also, just for the sake of those who aren't here tonight, just read down the initiatives once before, and then I'll go back. So right now we have an RTI initiative, that's response to intervention. We have a report card committee, our communications committee, which is a board request. We have a learning management task force, our science curriculum committee, our math K-12 curriculum committee, science K-12 as well, our phys ed health K-12 curriculum committee, mental health committee. In addition to those things that I've defined as a district, we also have a number of site-based initiatives. And chief among those at the high school is our competency initiative that continues, our comprehensive initiative that continues, and our interdisciplinary course development, which continues. In addition to that, we have all of the work that we do all the time at the elementary levels with literacy and the refinement of our collaborative assessment project, which has been in place for years, which continues to grow and develop. But tonight I just want to talk to you a little bit about the initiatives that I've just described to you and provide a little bit more meat on the bone. So you've heard us talk, and John Fabrizio, when he's been with you before, you've heard us talk about response to intervention. Essentially what that means, in our district anyway, is that we are really working hard to help our teachers, our classroom teachers, learn the skills and strategies they need as educators to provide excellent service to all students. So whereas in the past there might have been a tendency for educators in general, and I mean everywhere, to determine if a student had special needs of some kind, that the lion's share of that work would be done by special educators outside of the classroom. We do not subscribe to that. We are very inclusive in Merrimack, and we are working very hard to make sure that our classroom teachers have all the skills that they need to be excellent teachers of all students all the time, and that's really what response to intervention means. And the way that that works is that we rely on data. We have a variety of assessment data that we use, and I'm just going to list a few now, some of which the board knows because it's approved through budget. STAR assessment data for ELA and math, Fountas and Pinnell data for literacy, the GRADE assessment, which stands for Group Reading Assessment and Diagnostic Evaluation for grades 7 and 8, Smarter Balanced at grades 3 through 8, and SAT at grade 11. We have competency grades, classroom grades, and that's just a few. I could list more, but just as an example, those are some of the assessments that we implement regularly that we evaluate and to learn a few things. We learn, for instance, is our instruction appropriate for the needs of the students in our class? If not, where are we needing to provide additional supports? If it is, where do we need to provide additional extensions? The way that that works is you have to establish an RTI Universal Committee whose job really is to look at that data and to make some general statements. So each building has a site-based RTI committee that looks at its site-based data, and they look at the data results from those assessments that I'm showing you and others, and they look to see parallels. One assessment might be an outlier, so we look to kind of triangulate and see if I could just use Board Member Gualiumi, for instance. If we look at Board Member Gualiumi's assessment scores over a period of time, and we look at a variety of them, we wonder, is her performance on this or that assessment an outlier, or does she have a similar result on this assessment and this assessment? And if so, we begin to establish what's a pattern, and then we can be able to say, all right, Board Member Gualiumi needs this kind of intervention, or she's really thriving, so she needs this kind of extension. We do that on a building-by-building basis. We also do that on a district basis. So the RTI committee that I've indicated in your in the packet that I just gave you is really the district committee that looks at the data that comes from Thorntons Ferry, Reeds Ferry, MES, and all the schools, and we look for patterns across the district. And we look at them through standards. So we look at one of the reading standards, and we see whether or not a particular standard is being met in one grade and perhaps in one school, and not perhaps as well at the same grade in a different school, and we track the standard. And if so, then we have a meeting to determine, well, what are you doing in that school? What strategies are you employing that we might want to employ? So we have established this RTI Universal Committee that meets monthly, whose sole objective is to look at the student data that's generated from assessments, make data statements about where we can continue to do our work if the data is looking like we're meeting the standards, the achievement goals for our students, and as I said before, where we need to improve and where we need to extend. So that committee is comprised of educators and administrators. We meet monthly. We bring hard data. We fall into groups, and we work through it for an hour or two. Then we make data statements. We put the data statements up on the wall, and we look to see patterns emerging. And off of that, we do things like, say, if we see characteristic problem of students performing at a certain level at a standard in grade 8, we understand that really that problem, for lack of a better word, probably started earlier than grade 8. And so then we track back to see where did it begin to show itself as a cohort. And then we begin to address the needs that where they arise at the earlier grades, because the problem doesn't just manifest itself, at 8th grade. It's probably come from somewhere. Likewise, we do that at the high school, and we try to track back, just so that we can work hard to identify where an issue exists and what we can do, whether through curriculum, through materials, through professional development for teachers, what we can do. So that's just an overview of the RTI committee. The implication of that is all instruction is impacted because all students are subject to excellent Tier 1 instruction, which is the instruction that all students get. And it certainly prioritizes students first. This is more about students than it has ever been before. That's RTI initiative. We also have a district report card committee, and right now it's a K through 6 committee. That's primarily a function of the fact that it would be too big a job to oversee a K-12 evolution of a new reporting system all at once. So we're going K-6, and then in the not too distant future we'll be tackling the next iteration of that. But that's an important thing, because what we've seen for many years now is our curriculum and our instruction practices kind of outpacing our reporting mechanism. And so we have got to meet as a district team of teachers and administrators and ask some serious questions, which we've begun, like, who is a report card for? What is the goal of a reporting system first and foremost? We have to get our answers to that consistent and coherent for ourselves before we even contemplate a different system of reporting. And we've begun the process to realize that really a reporting system is first and foremost for students. It helps the students recognize where they are at a given point in time, and helps them and the teacher to recognize steps they need to take to improve going forward, because we're not done when you get a report card. It's all about next steps and where to. It's also an important tool for parents, because many, many, many parents and guardians want to support their students, and they want to do it in a way that's meaningful. And so we have to think, if the report card is for parents too, what kinds of language, what kinds of reporting tools are going to be meaningful to parents? We're all familiar with the ABC reporting system, but one of the things that we've rhetorically grappled with is, what is a B's worth of learning? What does that mean to have a B's worth of learning? Sometimes that's an amalgam of an average that includes some great work and some not great work, and if you average it all together and divide by that number that you put in, you get a grade. That equivalent equals a letter, and you get that. And we've all grown up in that system. But if we're really, really, really trying to have students and teachers and parents understand where a student is at a given point in time, maybe things as vague as B plus, need to be improved. I don't come to you tonight telling you that I have the answer to that. What I'm telling you is that we're asking the question, and we're really taking it seriously. Related to that are issues around our homework practices and our practices around extra credit. And I'll just give you a brief example of what we're grappling with. If a student is provided with a very rigorous performance assessment, and it has all the components of the standard that's been taught, and a student is given a fair opportunity to demonstrate what he or she knows, and can do that, and perhaps can do that when called upon again, so that there's really good sense that the student has mastered the material. If you were to factor in lack of doing homework into that, then that would decrease the grade that would be reported to the parent and the student, which may or may not reflect what the student actually knows. What it would do is it would combine a habit with a skill set and paint a picture that may not be accurate. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, what is the purpose of homework, and what is the purpose of homework relative to grading practices? So I forecast that for you tonight, not to tell you that we have answers, but I want you to know behind the scenes the kinds of questions that our team is grappling with. Likewise, if a student is doing very poorly in class and can't, when called upon, exhibit the content or the skills, but has a history of passing in homework, and that inflates their grade, we're happy for an inflated grade, but it doesn't necessarily represent the ability of a student to handle the content that they're really responsible for. So it's a challenging issue. We find that even in our district, we have lots and lots of opinions about that. But the thing that I want the board and the public to know is that we have a team right now who's actively grappling with those things. And if anybody would suggest that they have a simple answer for it, then I wish that you'd call me. It is not a simple thing. But I do hope that people realize that we're taking it seriously. We also, as the board well knows, we have a communications committee. And in fact, board members Guglielmi and Thompson are on that committee, and they know as well as I do that the goal is really to identify the end user concerns and interests relative to district and school communications. And the end user is both the parent and the student. And so we're really working hard as a district committee to understand what are the issues that are of concern to our constituents. And our constituents aren't necessarily just parents either. They're the taxpayers. They're just community members who all have a vested interest in how our district communicates with the community. And so, as the board knows, we have recently implemented a survey that we've gotten the results back, and we're evaluating those results, and we're looking at them from a variety of angles. We're looking at those results from the level of the communications committee, but we're also looking at those results from the district level and the building level, because there are things that the schools can do tomorrow to enhance communication, and we've already begun meeting with our leadership to put in place some of those things to enhance communication, to help people to understand better the things that we're trying to do, to be about, to help folks understand the things that are really complicated, that we need to be better explainers about expectations, and so that if a thing happens, like for instance our response to an emergency, people will not wonder why did it happen, when it happened, why was there a delay, but that if we do a better job explaining some of the imperatives that we're under, that we have to address first and foremost the safety of our students, then people might better understand why it is that, for instance, a call might have been somewhat delayed, or why they might, in some cases, have heard about it on social media before they hear about it from us. We have to do a better job of explaining why it is that we're working under some constraints and what those constraints are, so that people in our community can be partners rather than sort of sitting at home just kind of wondering and feeling somewhat concerned that they aren't as aware as they might be. We owe that to them, and the Communications Committee, among many other things, is trying to figure out how to do that job better. That's a committee made up of teachers, administrators, board members, community members, parents, and I think that we've already seen great gains with that committee just in terms of voicing some issues that are of concern. That's been huge, just that, and now actively trying to address that. That's a district initiative that's ongoing. Our Learning Management Task Force, pardon me, is a committee, a task force that's about to start. Nancy Rose is going to lead that, and it's really an initiative to help identify and then ultimately apply and implement a system for, among other things, supporting and enhancing online learning, and the management of grading practices and communication to be a support to PowerSchool. So I'm sure in the near future, Nancy will be back at the board to talk to you about that, but that's a group that's just getting underway now, but it's important for the board and the public to know that tools don't just get put in place by fiat, that it's in every case that I'm mentioning, we have people working in committee or a task force really to identify the need, the scope of the problem, the possible solutions, timelines for addressing budgetary impact, and then moving forward with a recommendation. None of that is easy, and all of it takes time, but we've, I hope, shown over time that we're deliberate enough so that when we make recommendations, we've done due diligence, and it hasn't been rushed. I should have put this in a slightly different order, excuse me, because I like to end with math, but the Science Committee and the Phys Ed Health Committee are both groups that have been meeting for some time, and particularly I think the board is familiar with the science work. We are nearing completion of that process. It has been, as all of our curriculum initiatives now, not a siloed campaign, just elementary, separate from middle, separate from high school, but our educators K through 12 have met monthly for several years, working from strand to strand to strand, developing enduring understandings, essential questions, unit plans that will produce a comprehensive, systematic K-12 science curriculum that supports the biggest goal in the Merrimack School District, which is understanding. And I feel sometimes when I'm speaking to the board, it's like just beating a dead horse, but it's so important for the community to know that what we're really about is understanding. It's not enough for a student to be able to recite math facts, or to be able to identify the longest river in the world, or to be able to fill in the blank about what happens when you put two substances together. They have to understand why those things exist and why those things happen the way they do. And so that is embedded in our science work. It's also embedded in our phys ed and health curriculum development work, which those educators are together now, as they have been for the last year and a half, and they really are asking tough questions of each other. Why do we teach rules of the game? Why does it matter? Why does it matter? What does lifelong health and wellness mean? What are things that schools can do to teach, to put into the minds of students practices that they can continue after they've left school, in the summer, on the weekend, or when they graduate? And those are not things that are easy or obvious, but those are the kinds of things that we're really compelling our teachers to ask themselves, so that they can create a curriculum that they can create a curriculum that drives that understanding home to students. And so you'll see more from the science team later this year, and certainly next fall when we're really ready to have a final product for you. And the Phys Ed and Health Curriculum group, I think, will come in the next quarterly review to give you more meat on the bones about what they've been doing, because they've really been working well. And it's very important for you to know that the Phys Ed and the health teams are working side by side. And we're including conversations around substance use and abuse, and deciding, looking at research to figure out when the most proper time is to introduce those questions to students. You can do it too young, but you can also wait too long. And so we're working right now on figuring out what that sweet spot is. I just want to take a few more minutes, if I could, to talk about our math committee. That is, I would say, one of our most intensive and most serious, the most serious work that we've undertaken in this last year. And so let me just give you a little bit of the backstory of that. We have established a committee that is comprised of, again, teachers K through 12 and administrators K through 12. So we don't have silos of people working in separate places, because we know that a student who comes to us in kindergarten and stays with us through 12th grade goes through all the different iterations of our schooling, and it benefits them if they are grown up through a system that is consistent from grade to grade to grade, that knows from whence a student came and where that student is going. So it's important that when we get the earliest development stages, we have to have high school people at the table to inform elementary people about what it is they're expecting a college and career-ready student to be able to do in mathematics. And conversely, it's sometimes helpful for an elementary teacher to remind a high school student about developmental readiness for some things. And in that dialogue, we have the makings of a really good and strong curriculum. So it's a comprehensive curriculum development process, K-12, led by educators and administrators. The goal is to develop a streamlined K-12 math curriculum that prepares students in both understanding and application that's college and career ready. We have also spent a lot of time researching curriculum, both locally, what our districts in our state doing, and nationally, what our districts and schools around the country doing. We've spent a lot of time researching and looking at those. We're interested in developing where we need to develop, and we're not interested in reinventing a wheel that's been built well. And so we've spent a lot of time doing that. We've consulted college and career-ready standards for guidance, because the college and career-ready standards are all about the intersection of application and understanding. And so we've made sure that we've consulted those as well. And then we are in the process of developing our Merrimack Way, which is incorporating the enduring understandings and the essential questions into all of the developed curriculum. Because an enduring understanding, for those who might not remember from other times that I've spoken about it, is a way to frame a student's learning so that they have a context for the thing that they're being taught. So if I just start talking to you about negative numbers and I don't give you any context about their value, how they can be applied, what their point is, what their mathematical purpose is, but I just tell you negative numbers and ask you to start doing them, you could maybe do hundreds on a page and not have a fundamental understanding about what they mean and what they are and what they do. So an enduring understanding is developed to help a student contextualize their learning about this skill or that content so that they can really have a good sense of, yep, I got it, I know I am doing this, now I'm open, and this is all brain research, now I'm open to understanding what it is you're teaching me. That's a very unique Merrimack initiative that we've put on, it's a unique Merrimack initiative that we have applied to all our curriculum development work. In addition to that work, which is ongoing, we're making great strides, but we have a little bit more to do, and I'll say more about that at the end of this year and provide you with another update on that. But in addition to that, we have a very important simultaneous concern, and that is we're at a point where it's appropriate now for us to look at our curriculum materials that support our math materials that support and will support our developing curriculum. And we have taken this on for the last 6 months or so because we have had our current system, Everyday Math, for about 10 years, and it's an appropriate time to review our practices. That's a standard way that many districts operate, because it takes a long time to get trained up in a system, to learn the system, to implement the system, to evaluate its effectiveness. 10 years is a good time to take a look. We're at that mark, and we have begun that process. I want to talk to you just a little bit about the materials adoption process that has been simultaneous with the math adoption, the math curriculum development. So the committee that I described, K through 12 administrators, as well as educators, researched math publishers, online resources to identify programs that span K through 6, K through 8, 6 through 12, and K through 12. They're all out there, and they're all varieties. And so the first question is, what are we most interested in? And what programs are out there that are the best versions of those things? So if you ever watch like dog shows, you see, like, you wonder, why did that dog win? Because that dog's cuter than that dog. But what you really need to know is, what's the best example of that dog? So if a collie is the winner, that's because that's the best example of that collie, right? So we're looking at lots and lots of K-6 programs, but we're looking for the best example of a K-6 program or the best example of a K-12 program, and that takes time and research. We've consulted with independent researchers on best practices and programs. There are a number of databases, of independent researchers that review math programs and provide guidance on what would be outstanding programs if you're looking for application. What are outstanding programs if you're looking for understanding? What are outstanding programs if you're looking for both? That doesn't mean that we have always completely gone with those recommendations, but they're a starting point because they're independent researchers who provide information. We've looked at that. We've developed our own rubric, pardon me, to apply to all the programs that we've looked at. Then we've identified a point system to apply to each program. So we've looked at the whole array, we've looked at the research, we've looked at what independent researchers have said, we've then taken them on, we've gotten copies, we've looked, worked with publishers to get them, developed a rubric where we assign points based on the points of the parts of the rubric that were developed. For instance, to include but not limited to ease of use, the relationship or applicability of the program to college and career-ready standards, effective grade-level transitions, online components, the variety of professional development that's offered, the parent support that's offered, the assessments that come with the program. Just to name a few of the things that our educators and administrators have been looking at to evaluate, and based on those things, they have applied a point system. Then we have sat in a room, independent from one another, so it would be as if all of us at the table would look at a program, we'd look at our rubric, we'd mark it according to what we would think it deserves. We keep that to ourselves, we pass the program along, and over a period of weeks and months, went through these and then developed a point system. We have now come to the time where we have 4 selections that we are ready to take to the next level, and those are we have 2 K-8 programs and 2 K-12 programs. The 2 K-8 programs are Go Math, which is a Houghton Mifflin product, Math in Focus, which is a Houghton Mifflin product. The 2 K-12 programs that we have that have gotten the highest points that are now moving on to the next level are Envisions, which is a Pearson product, and Eureka, which is published by Engage New York. So again, those 4 are the finalists for whatever we would choose to adopt in our district. If at the end of the process, the committee, which I'll describe in a minute, if the committee were to choose a K-8 program, in other words, a program that does not reach into the high school, then we will have a separate job, which is to find a program that fits the needs of the unique needs of the high school, that transitions as well as possible with the existing K-8 program. So if one of the 2 K-12 programs, for a variety of reasons, gets the final wins, or however we want to say that, then obviously that issue is resolved because it's a streamlined K-12 program. We're not concerned. We were trying to look for the best program or programs we can find, and if the best one is K-8, then that's the one we'll get, and we will make sure that we do a good job making a good transition to high school programs. The way that this process is going to work is that, excuse me, beginning on or about February 6th, we are going to begin what we're calling the evaluation process. You might have heard the term pilot before. We've stayed away from that term, although that's the term you should think of when you think about what I'm talking about. But the reason we've moved away from the term pilot is because it often sort of unintentionally creates kind of a have and have not situation with those who pilot. So if this part of the room piloted Envisions, if you're a pilot teacher, you're putting all your energy into that. And so you know it well, you like it. So let's say you're Thornton's Ferry and you're the Envision school. And let's say that Vice Chair Schneider and Chairperson Barnes represent Reed's Fair, another school, and they're on Go Math. Because you've invested the same attention and energy, when you go to vote for the best, it typically happens that you like the program you dealt with most, and you like the program that you dealt with most, and then we have, where are we? So we're doing it very differently. We have teachers in every school at every grade who are going to be exposed to every one of these programs. That presents unique challenges for the teacher because they're going to have to get used to 4 programs in a small amount of time. It presents challenges to the learner because he or she will be experiencing a variety of programs over a period of time. And so those are true things. However, we are working very hard to make sure that the teachers who are volunteering are doing it voluntarily, and they are. And we're going to make sure that our parents and the students in the evaluated grades understand that for this period of time, it's a necessary messiness, but we're working very hard to make sure that the standards that drive instruction are still met. So they'll be met using this program for a few weeks, they'll be met using this program for a few weeks, and what the teachers are trying to do is to evaluate which program helps to achieve that goal the best. But we're really working very hard to minimize impact on the learner. But it's important to say publicly that it's not seamless. It's not completely not messy. However, we realize that the best way to get the best feedback from the most number of people is to have all the teachers experience all, so that they're not wedded to one more than another, but they can really look objectively using a rubric for this process that we're developing right now that will allow them to make a judgment where they stand, which program will serve our students best for our needs now that matches the curriculum, because any program is just a program. We have a curriculum. A program is not a curriculum. We're developing a curriculum. Our teachers understand what that developing curriculum is, and the program is going to be in support of that. It will not be the curriculum. So that process is scheduled to go on through the course of second semester. We will bring to PERC at the end of this year, the Program Evaluation and Review Committee, our final recommendations, and then after that to the board. And I know that the board is continuing to have budget dialogue, but if it so happens that that the budget is approved, then we have the funds in the proposed budget for an adoption that would happen in this summer, and will align the professional development and be in place for the fall. That's the plan. So I just wanted to spend just a little bit more time with you on the math part. It's the most in-depth that I've talked to you about it for a while. You've heard much more from science. But this group is just been outstanding in their seriousness of purpose and in their deliberateness when it comes to both developing a curriculum and finding a program that will support that curriculum. And I'll just leave you with this vision statement for the district math curriculum. We will provide 21st century learners rigorous opportunities to develop into creative, inquisitive mathematicians who recognize and persevere in understanding mathematical situations. There was some debate as to whether we wanted to call all students mathematicians, and then we said, well, why wouldn't we? Because for too long we have, I don't mean Merrimack, I mean I think in education we've created a sense that math might not be for everyone. And math is for everyone, and it can be for everyone, and it's up to us to make it for everyone. And so we are calling our students mathematicians, and they have to recognize and persevere math situations, not just math problems, but math situations. So back to our initiatives. The last one that I would mention that's a significant district initiative is our mental health committee. And that you have heard from a number of folks, Julie DeLuca and John Fabrizio in particular. But you should also know that that committee is comprised of a lot of stakeholders, and they are doing tremendous work. And their primary function right now is to try to unearth the depth of the problem, both the depth of the problem and the nature of the problem. Before they make any recommendations about personnel or programs, they're trying, as we all are, to try to get a handle on what are the challenges facing our learners, what are the challenges facing our educators who are trying to help and support those learners, try to begin to get a sense of the scope and the need. In so doing, try to learn as much as we can about the issue of mental health and mental illness. We have established a wonderful partnership with former Chief Justice John Broderick, whose ChangeDirectionNewHampshire.org group has really gone very big statewide. He has already been to our district once. He's due back in late March to talk both to faculty in the afternoon of the day he'll arrive, and I'll give the board more details when that gets firmed up. This will be in late March. And then we're going to sponsor a family forum that is intended to allow Chief Justice Broderick to tell his story about his unique dealing with mental health in his own family, and then to be able to tap into him and his organization, both state, locally, and nationally, so that we can help support him and he can help support us. So that's just one of the ways that our mental health committee has really spurred us to greater understanding of this issue. And so that is ongoing, and honestly, I don't see that going away anytime soon. I think we've already seen benefits in the level of understanding of our educators, just in the scope, and just, if nothing more, to say, I need help handling a student with these issues, and I wonder where I might turn. And we're already beginning to identify helpers. And so we're very grateful to their work. So my goal tonight was, and I've spoken quite a long time, but so you'll laugh when I say briefly, but I've tried to be relatively brief given the scope of what we're trying to be about, to just to let the board and the public know that though we don't talk about a lot of things all the time, we are doing them. There really is a lot going on, and it's as purposeful as we can make it be. So I look forward to the next curriculum review to provide you with more information about math, update on science, and wherever else we are at that time. I'm sure you have questions, and so I'm anxious to take whatever you have.
Questions from the board? I saw Andy's hand. Go first.
So, excuse me. So this is a great update. Typical of Andy's brief phone call is sort of like what you just did, so that's cool. I'm going to re-ask a question I asked to the high school during the budget discussion, because when you talk about, you talked about two sets of supporting materials that you're looking at, two options for K through 6 or K through 8 and 2 K through 12. If you choose one of the K through 12s, and things go fast track, and it comes before us, and it comes in time that you're actually able to start the process over the summer to get things going, assuming everything goes like that. I'm concerned that the budget did not include a line item in the high school to get additional materials. Every other school had it, except the high school. So if we go through a K through 12 and we decide to implement it for the next year, how do you handle what the high school would do with it?
Yep. So if we were to choose one of the two K through 12, in our current system that we have in place, we have the funds for a K through 8 adoption. We would have piloted or evaluated at the high school, so we would know that that was their choice as well. And really all that we do is just use our current materials, which have, are fine. I mean, they've supported us over a period of time. And it will be like often, adoptions are, which is in a 2-stage process. So we are not concerned, Ron DeLude, Ken Johnson are not concerned if the adoption were to be sort of in a 2-pronged process, because we also have our curriculum. That's, I think, the huge thing. If we didn't have a curriculum that was supporting our whatever materials we chose, that'd be more worrisome, because then people, could theoretically be kind of off on doing their own thing or what have you. But the development of a curriculum in any field is so important, because it keeps people true to the goals and the standards. And so what would happen is the evolved curriculum that would apply to the high school as well would be met by the materials that we currently have, and they can be. The question would, the benefit a year hence, is that we now have a better set of materials and a more streamlined K through 12 continuum, which we don't currently have. And so that's the ultimate benefit. But we are not concerned in that remaining year, because we have a curriculum that guides us. And so we've thought a lot about that, but we are feeling that the high school is going to be in a good place. That just is our assessment.
Any other questions?
No, I was just going to say thanks, because that didn't come out clearly when we were going to the budget discussion. And maybe you should have done this before we did the budget review that included that one key piece, because
Sure.
it was probably one of the big changes from last year is fairly hefty, but justifiable textbook budget across all the schools. So I just want to get clarity on that.
Sure.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions from Mark's presentation? Cinda?
I have a comment, which is thank you for the presentation and for the documentation that you provided. I think you did an outstanding job of summarizing the work that's being done in the district, some of which I'm quite familiar with because of my own personal involvement, and other areas not so much. So it was very insightful for me as a school board member, and I really appreciate bringing it out to the public as well, because there's a lot of good work that you're doing and really exciting stuff, and I think you did an outstanding job of presenting it. One request I would have would be just this document, if you wouldn't mind putting it out on the website, so if anyone wanted to reference it, they could. But thanks again.
Michael, I'm putting you on the spot just to make sure I'm not missing you.
No, I do appreciate it. No, I just wanted to say thanks. I appreciate the overview, and also very interested to see how the report cards and also the homework piece and how the reporting will be done in the future. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? I have a couple, and it really is about, again, communication. I see so much cross-pollination of your efforts here in this report, and that when you're talking about introducing new math curriculum, using some of those communication committee tools and resources that you have to put the word out about what these programs are, where to find good resources so parents can get better versed on them as well, get familiar with them, find where the parental resources are. And then just as we had when my kids were in elementary school, so it was probably that mid-time for when we were using everyday math, having a parent night so they can understand the new program to support our existing curriculum structure and enhanced curriculum structure. So that's going to be, I think, very important. The communication of it helps with the buy-in from the families and the users. And the one thing that's going to be interesting when you're coming up into your next quarter evaluation is you're talking about those piloted areas. And I think I'm interested to know how, you talked about how they're going to change the test different systems with the same test number of students. And I know some of it is foundation work. So how using different methodologies for teaching, you're still going to meet the standards, but how the kids responded to the different ones and the change of program over, every few weeks, and what you were measuring from that. So just to make sure that, and are we going to be able to measure their performance, say, when we do our smarter balance testing for math? Will they be able to be segregated so we can see as they're getting tested next year how some of these moving parts may have affected the way that they could perform on standardized testing? So we just want to make sure as we have a test subject that if there's anything where we have to build them back up because of the changes in programs, that we have maybe some interventions in place. So because that's something we want to make sure that everyone's getting that same crack at consistency for learning the curriculum. And then on the mental health, I know you're going to bring up more in March, but I think that when it comes to Supreme Court Justice Broderick coming in, or former Supreme Court Justice Broderick, that this is we see so much of it in our schools. I would call it a concentrated environment, but knowing that mental health issues are a challenge for the community at large, knowing if we can get a feel for what the demand would be for seeing his presentation, and making sure that we have a facility that can house all those interested, because I do think when you talk about mental health crisis, that it definitely goes beyond the school community, and to have a resource like Mr. Broderick come in, I think might be a farther reaching resource. Go ahead.
So thank you for that. At our next meeting, I anticipate being able to say to the board and the community when Chief Justice Broderick will be in Merrimack. It's going to be in the 20s in March, and just working with him on negotiating that. But it's going to be then, and so I would look forward to being able to work with the board and use our online resources to publicize and our different parent groups and so on, because we certainly, when we have a person like him with his knowledge and connections, we really want to make sure that as many people know about it as can, so that they'll have plenty of time to decide to be there on that evening. And the plan for that day is that in the afternoon they'll be with faculty. We're going to have our March faculty meetings be just one altogether, where the Chief Justice will be able to speak to all the faculty. And so the leadership team's already been apprised of that, and they're going to work that out. And then it's and then stick around a little bit in the afternoon, and then come back for an evening event. So I'll have much more information for the board in the meeting in February.
Sounds great. Andy?
Just, I don't know if you warned at the meeting, in Merrimack Safeguard, we actually talked about this as well, to make sure that we do focus more broadly than just the school. So the Safeguard wants to help sponsor the sort of presentation level of event, so that it is a community-wide thing. And whether it's at a school or some other facility, it's going to be a community-focused. I mean, obviously the school's taking advantage during the day, but during the presentation, we're going to try to make it more community-focused. So.
Excellent. So with no other questions or comments, we will go on to agenda item number 4, which is the board's final response to the proposed 2017-2018 school district budget. At our last meeting, we received from Matt the wonderful news that the roof bids came in $35,000 under budget, which brings the proposed budget amount to $73,673,057. Is there any feedback, questions, comments regarding the budget as it's been presented? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to move forward this budget. Andy?
I move that we move the operating budget for the 2017-2018 year for the Merrimack School District in the amount, as you said before, of $73,673,057 as part of the warrant article that we do, and move this on to the Budget Committee, I believe is the next step.
Is there a second? Seconded by Cinda. Any comments to the motion?
I'm just going to comment really quickly that I think we as a board have, with the help of administration, have really done a lot of due diligence in terms of what this budget is, what it contains. I think that while it is an increase over last time, it's under 2% increase. It includes not only the contractual obligations for, salaries and stuff, but it also includes the right investments for things such as the math curriculum, the placeholders that we talked about. And I think that the removal of certain capital items into potential warrant articles that we'll talk about in a couple of meetings helps to give the voters a good feel of sort of control, if you will, over not only the operating budget, but also some of the things that we felt we could pull out. So I know that it's not perfect. It's gone up. I'd love to see it go down, but it doesn't make sense to go down given what we're trying to accomplish as a district. So I'm comfortable with what this is based on our discussions.
Are there any other comments? Andy, I couldn't have said it better myself. I think, when you talk about what we're presenting, we are restoring what can't be put off. We make a commitment not to kick the can and burden other boards, and in the long run, costing the taxpayers more by delaying it to make ourselves feel better about a number. So I know we have experienced, even with just the furniture replacement, an increase just because we're buying the same thing a year later because of the default budget that we operated in this year. So with that, I think that we are trying to keep our facilities whole, our curriculum to the commitments that we make as a board to put out the best quality public education that we can, and of course always strive for improvement, because it's what I always hear at this table is just do one better, always do at least one better, and I think that this will accomplish those goals. What I would say is when we do go to our warrant articles, that these are things that they can be put off, but it's not necessarily in the best interest, and we will defend those individually as we go forward to the voters in future meetings and again at the deliberative session in March. So I feel pretty good about it. Michael, did you have any comments or questions?
I just had a comment. I wanted to obviously reiterate what both of you said. I also just want to thank the staff and the administration for the time that they put in to present a budget that I think was put forward with the taxpayers in mind, keeping the expenses increases to a minimal, obviously with some large expenses such as the roof, the heating system. I think that they definitely added to the additional increase along with some of the items that were put off from the last year. But I know that there's a lot of hours that are put in prior to coming to the board in the due diligence. I just wanted to say that I appreciate that very much.
Thank you. That being said, we are going to have to roll call vote. So, Michael, how do you vote?
I vote in favor.
Naomi?
In favor?
Cinda?
In favor.
Andy?
In favor?
And I vote in favor. The motion carries 5-0-0. Thank you all for all your hard work on this. And hopefully the voters got the opportunity to take a look, evaluate, and I never heard back from anyone. Our meetings have not been attended. So I think we've done an exemplary job of communicating this, and we will hopefully have a very smooth process as we continue. Yes, Andy.
I was going to do this during the correspondence section, but I'll do it here because it's appropriate. I heard from at least 2 separate voters that they appreciated the pictorial on the capital improvement stuff so that they could see what we talked about. So it goes sort of to our communication idea that the more we put out visually, the more we put out data and information helps the voters. So you just take that as a thumbs up and just keep going forward with it. So.
Well, that's good, and especially from my viewpoint, when I'm looking at this, I know what I'm talking about. I can see it in my head and whatnot, and you kind of take it for granted that everybody else knows what the front of the high school sidewalk looks like, but it's not the case. So this year we tried to do a much better job with that, with giving you some graphical representations and some videos that we put up there and put online. So we'll continue to do that and try and get a little bit more, let's see, sophisticated in our production methods. So.
Excellent. Oh, Cinda.
I was just going to say, although we're at the point where we are with the board's part of the process, there's still time for constituents to be able to find out more about the budget as the budget moves through the remaining process, which would be through moving to the budget committee as well as the deliberative session.
You're segueing lovely. Thank you. Perfectly segueing. Because that brings us to item number 5, which is review budget committee hearing dates and deliberative session date. In your packets, you will find the budget committee's department review schedule and also a memo from Marge that outlines some suggested dates for the deliberative session. And if you've had a chance to review it, the goal would be, I'll go through the budget committee's meetings first. They'll be meeting Tuesday, January 24th. They'll be going over all of the elementary schools, the upper elementary school, the middle school, and the high school. And then on Tuesday, January 31st, they'll be reviewing food service, special services, library and media services, maintenance, and then the district-wide budget. And then on Thursday, February 2nd, which would be a snow date if budgets did not get reviewed or a budget meeting had to be delayed. And for the deliberative session, which is where we all get to meet and go over all of our goals one more time, we are looking for the date of March 8th because we have a meeting on March 6th. Gives us that Wednesday, and we'll be at the Master Kohler Upper Elementary School, as it has been in prior years. Does that suit everyone else's schedules? Naomi?
I have a prior commitment on Wednesdays that would need to be worked around.
Okay. Michael?
That date at this time is good with me.
Cinda?
I believe the date at this time is good.
And Andy?
So far, so good for me, too.
And with Naomi's schedule having a conflict, we usually choose not to have board meetings 2 days in a row. But if the 7th was amenable, does that work for your schedule, Naomi?
It would probably be simpler if I can look back and see whether I can clear the 8th
Okay.
first, and then let you know. And if not, we can look at the 7th.
Okay. We would, Marge, I feel like.
So legal counsel needs to be present with us. The better date for legal counsel is March 8th. She is going to be in Florida and will readjust her schedule if necessary. So if it's all possible to make the change, that would be excellent. If not, she will make accommodation because we need to have her present. So if that's just something I can know by week's end, that would be great, because there are people obviously who are anxious to know this date, and that includes the school moderator, the school clerk, et cetera. They're all waiting on that. So
I can let you know by
can you?
tomorrow.
Excellent.
Perfect. Cinda?
And kind of along the lines of getting the word out, I would hope that we might do a little better job than last year of getting the word out regarding the deliberative session. If we can, make sure that the notices are present along the same vein of what we did, of what went out with the course, with what we publicly put out regarding the process this year, the budget process. But I don't know if there's a way to get some support from the town regarding the deliberative session. I think the town put their deliberative session on the flashing boards or the flashing signs on the road. I just want to make sure that we're stepping it up as far as getting the word out regarding the deliberative session.
And I will say that when we did put the press release together to give another touch point to voters, it was covered in the Merrimack Patch, the Union Leader, and the Telegraph. So we would hit those three again, and we can absolutely, once we have a final date, just put together the same type of draft out to the press. And we have a couple other resources we can use. Obviously, Channel 21 has billboards we can use as well. And we'll always use our district website, which would include the app. So, and for those that don't know, we have an app. It's on the Google Store and the Apple Store. So you can put your the district app right on your phone, which is a great way to keep up to date with what we're doing. Yeah, we can absolutely do all those things. So tentatively, we'll look at the 8th, and if you definitely can't move it, we will work with legal counsel to try and make it the 7th.
And I would ask you to also hold the 9th. In case we have inclement weather or whatever, it would automatically go to the 9th so that we have that scheduled, and we would say such in our communications.
Which is a Thursday. So with that, we will tentatively schedule it for the 8th with hope that we can, we're putting a lot of pressure on you right now, but and we'll go from there. And so we're on to item number 6, which is a couple of new policies, and I will turn the mic over to Marge.
Thank you.
Hey, Shannon.
Oh, Michael.
I just have to drop at this point, so I just wanted to let you know before dropping off.
Thank you, Michael. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
So I have 2 policies before you tonight, and my colleagues are going to help me in putting them before you because tonight is the read. I need you to know that the first one, entitled Admission of Resident Students, was crafted by our legal counsel, Kathy Peel. And I would also tell you that we have had in place procedures for many years about dealing with the admission of residents and non-resident students. However, our cases are becoming much more complex in scope. And so it caused us to really, if you will, craft policies that we think better address the issues at this time. So I will start off with the admission of resident students. A student's residence for purpose of school enrollment is determined by the resident of the parent or legal guardian as set forth in revised statutes annotated 193:12, Roman numeral 2. If the student's parents are divorced, residence will be determined pursuant to the divorce decree or parenting plan. See policy JFAB. All parents, legal guardians, seeking to enroll a child for the first time in Merrimack must register at the school where they will be enrolled prior to the first day of school or prior to the first day of attendance if entering after the school year has begun. All new students must have proof of a physical examination completed within the past 12 months, immunization records, and a copy of the student's birth certificate. All parents, legal guardians seeking to enroll a student in the Merrimack School District must provide proof of residency satisfactory to the superintendent or his/her designee. If questions regarding a new or previously enrolled student's legal residence arise, the superintendent may require a parent or guardian to complete an affidavit of residency attesting to the student's legal residence in Merrimack. If the superintendent determines that a student has been attending school in Merrimack whose legal residence is not in Merrimack, the matter may be referred to the school board, and the parents or legal guardians may be charged tuition in accordance with policy JFAB, in parens, admission of tuition and non-resident students, in parens, for the period of such attendance. Principals or their designees will meet with new children and parents to explain school programs. The superintendent is authorized to develop procedures consistent with this policy. The legal references are RSA 193:1, duty of parent, compulsory attendance by pupil, and RSA 193:12, legal residence required. I want to come back to you and tell you that in the third paragraph, you'll see affidavit of residency. This is something, again, that Attorney Peel has created so that we are now, if we feel there is question about the residency, we are asking the parent, the party who is housing the parent, many times it's a grandparent, to go before a notary public and have the affidavit of residency signed. So it is to try to really show seriousness of purpose relative to residency. So as I say, in the past we've had procedures in place, but we really needed to have a very strong policy in place. So this addresses that. So I would just pause and ask, are there any questions about this policy?
Any questions, of the board? Cinda?
I think it's a really good first draft of the policy, and I think the policy, I'm definitely in favor of having it. The one question I have is I periodically will go to other districts' websites and check them out and when I can. And in some cases, I've seen actually the tuition that the school district charges kind of very easily available for parents. I think that when people are in this situation, and it sounds like we've got a lot of split homes and things like that. And so I just wanted to kind of throw that out there, not as a requirement per se, but just maybe we should consider putting the tuition out there, or maybe this policy in a place that might be more easily accessible compared with kind of our policy, compared to other policies within our, I guess, library, if you will. So that was just a thought that I had. And I don't necessarily think that the tuition itself needs to be in this document, but I think that it could help clarify as parents try to self-serve and try to figure out how to navigate through it. It might be helpful.
I would just respond. I certainly would want to check with legal counsel on that. It changes on an annual basis. I have a conversation with every set of parents, so I don't want to make out like I have 100 cases. The few cases I have are just more complex, and so we talk it through. And I think in some cases, if they saw the full amount, it might be so off-putting that we wouldn't even have a conversation. I think a conversation is very important, but I'm willing to certainly check with legal counsel on it. Mm-hmm.
And I actually just had one housekeeping thing. If you look at the end of paragraph 3, you talk about policy JFAB, which is the admission of tuition in non-resident students. If we could move that to the end of paragraph 1, see policy JFAB, so that way we're just re-referencing the same acronym. And my editor to the right, which I was looking, I'm like, what would the teacher do? So I was always told to do that in papers. And then the other thing is, I think, do we have a district, at the district level, do we have a notary?
We have 2 in our office.
So we would be able to offer those services to someone who would need to fill out that paperwork if needed?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So I think that's something I always see online. Who's a notary? I need to get something notarized, and especially if they're trying to fulfill our request, that we would have one available. So yeah, we do have them if needed during business hours. So those were the only 2 things I had. Were there any other questions or comments from the board on this policy? Well, you're on a roll. Policy number 2.
Admission of tuition and non-resident students. Non-resident students may only attend district schools when their attendance has been approved by the board. If the board agrees to enroll a non-resident student, the district will either charge tuition to the parent or, alternatively, the superintendent may seek to enter into an agreement for the payment of tuition with the school district in which the student resides. If the student's parents are divorced, the student's legal residence is that of the parent who was awarded sole or primary physical custody. If the parents are awarded joint or equal custody, then the student's legal residence for school attendance will be as set forth in the divorce decree or the parenting plan. Each parent shall furnish a copy of the divorce decree or parenting plan and any revisions or amendments thereto to the school district in which the parent resides. Students enrolled pursuant to a divorce decree or parenting plan will not be charged tuition. Upon the admission of a non-resident student to the district, the superintendent or designee will immediately notify the student's school district of residence of the student's name, date of birth, address, and grade assignment of the student. This notification shall also be made at the beginning of each school year for which the student is enrolled. The board acknowledges the provisions of RSA 193:3, which state that the district in which the student resides shall retain all responsibility for the provision of special education and related services pursuant to RSA 186-C. The board's decision on whether to enroll a non-resident student will not be based, in whole or in part, on whether that student is a student with a disability as defined by applicable state or federal law. Tuition rates will be charged at a rate set by the board and billed quarterly in advance to the district of residence or parent responsible for payment. If there is an agreement for the payment of tuition by a district of residence, approval of the tuition rate must be obtained from that district's school board.
Admission of tuition and non-resident students continued. Under normal circumstances, the district will not provide transportation at district expense to and from school or beyond the designated attendance areas for the school to which the student is assigned for non-resident and tuition students. However, the district may assist parents in finding and procuring transportation services for their children. The superintendent or designee will make all determinations as to whether transportation will be provided, and the superintendent or designee's decision will be final. The school board may make exceptions to this policy on a case-by-case basis as its discretion, pursuant to separate contracts, agreements, and other binding arrangements. Legal references: RSA 186-C:13, Special Education, liability for expenses, RSA 193:3, change of school or assignment, RSA 193:12, legal residence required. There's a cross-reference here, policy JFAA, admission of resident students.
Are there, Cinda? I'm going to ask. Go for it.
Just one minor thing. In the second paragraph, it starts out, if the student's parents are divorced. Maybe we want to say if the student's parents don't reside in the same residence, because not necessarily every student would come from parents that were divorced per se.
I'll go back and look, but I think that's right out of the statute. So I've got to have that, and then maybe add something else.
Okay.
Tell me what you just said, please.
Well, I said if the student's parents are divorced, we may want to say something to the effect of if the student's parents are not living in the same residence. My point is really simply that not every student has parents that were once married.
So I think we might have two phrases then, because the divorce is definitely in the statute.
So maybe it's divorced or blah,
Right.
blah, blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah.
Naomi, then Andy?
I realize that this is from statute as well, so it's more a clarification question. In regard to special education services, could you give an example of how that would work if a student were accepted to the district who is a non-resident, but another district retained responsibility for the liability of those services?
I think what it's saying is you could not preclude the student from coming to the district because you realized that the student had special needs. So that can't, because that would be discriminatory. So you simply have to accept the student and then provide the services.
I think that it's more the,
Take me to the, whoops.
I'm sorry, I should, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth paragraph, the district in which the student resides shall retain responsibility. So would that be a collaborative effort between two districts?
It would probably be, yes, like other collaborative efforts. Especially if the district has asked us to take the student for some reason and we have mutual agreement, which has happened before.
Thank you.
Andy?
So the second paragraph on the first page confused me a little bit because it says if the student's parents are divorced, the legal residence is that of the parent who's awarded sole custody or primary physical custody. Parents are awarded joint custody. Student's legal residence for the school will be set forth in the divorce decree or parenting plan. Each parent shall furnish a copy of the divorce decree or parenting plan and any revisions to the school district in which the parent resides. Now, if they're coming to us, I'm trying to see this reality. If the parents are in separate communities, but one parent has the primary sort of parenting plan, that both parents have to supply this information to their school districts? Is that what this says?
It just says where sometimes we deal with each separately. They don't communicate at all, so each can give over the plan. Now, that assumes that the plan is exactly the same.
Right, but it's to, whose district gets it? Our district or the individuals where they live? Because right now it says where they each reside is who gets that.
It depends on, legal residence is determined by where the child lives, literally where the child puts his head down at night, with what parent. And so in some cases, you'll see that the parenting plan switches back and forth. So 1 week it might be 3 days with one, 2 days with the other, or whatever. So each plan just looks a bit differently. So you work with both parents to try and resolve that. I need you to almost define further, I think.
Well, I think what you're saying, Andy, is if you and I are divorced and you live in Merrimack and I live in Bedford, do I have to give my copy of the decree to Bedford schools?
Correct. If it makes it sound like each parent gives a decree to the school district they live in, even if one of those districts is not responsible at all for the parenting plan,
Right. So what I would say is we probably are having more collaboration and talking back and forth districts because we have some very complex situations. So I might be talking to a fellow superintendent about a particular student and the fact that the parents are going back and forth, and we're trying to figure out where the child needs to be. So it could be that the plan is shared with both.
It would be good if we could clarify this only because, and maybe ask Attorney Peel about this, because if we truly want both districts for both parents to be notified, we should say that in here. We should just be clear as to who we want to have the eyes on the parenting plan or the divorce decree, just as we go through this. Because to me, I got lost a little bit. I mean, we've seen a lot of requests come in, and I followed most of this, but that's the only place where I sort of trying to figure out who needs to see the plan. So we can be very clear. And if the idea is to overkill to give the plan to all the districts, let's state it. Let's be clear about it.
Okay.
Cinda?
Is it possible that a parenting plan or divorce decree would not state where the students are to be enrolled, the school district in which the parent?
It is possible because they're dealing in the court and it's not clear. It's going back and forth. So that's why I say a lot of what we go through is just so case by case based, and it's very hard to come up with one thing that will be pertinent for all cases, but we're trying to do the best to make it as clear as we possibly can. But we actually have some cases that are just not resolved yet, and so you have to figure out what you're doing with a child as the court is dealing with the two parents. Or they will have had a plan, and then something happens, and they go back to court, and it readjusts itself, or it tips from one way to the other. And then what you're trying to do is to figure out, in the best interests of the child, is there a natural break in the school year where the child stays with us, then goes to the other district, or comes from the other district to us? So we're always trying to look out what makes the best sense for the child.
Is there anything that we would want to consider adding in here regarding that situation if it is not defined? Like, even if it's a simple statement as it will be handled on a case-by-case basis?
Yeah. I think only because I've spent quite a bit of time with Attorney Peel on this, what I would say, I'd probably rather be more global at this point in time till I come to a point where maybe the policy is not helping, and I come back to you and ask for modifications. So I think we're basing these policies right now on what we've been dealing with most currently, if that's helpful. Yeah.
Are there any other questions or comments? I only have one, and that was, you kind of alluded to it in an earlier statement, was that courts, they'll go back to court and make modifications. And in paragraph 3, the last line is, this notification shall also be made at the beginning of each school year for which the student is enrolled. I think we want to add language, and at any time there is a modification to any parenting and custodial plan, or parenting or custodial plan. So that way, if, you know, say in March, all of a sudden the Bedford parents get primary physical and legal custody, then, you know, it changes the dynamic of our responsibilities. So I definitely think we want to make sure that as courts are fluid, we need to be fluid with our expectations of how this gets implemented. But it's a messy world. It's a messy, I mean, even the policy, I think, is going to have to get tested a few times to polish it up. So, and I think we're going to have case studies that'll drive those decisions. But we always do. I mean, we definitely have a fluid population in New Hampshire and have for a long time. So, you know, we will expect to probably see this again sometime. So if there are any other questions or comments, if you could just email Marge, and if you could just give me the courtesy of letting me know that you did. We just want to make sure that as she's working with Attorney Peel, she's working efficiently. So with any questions or concerns that may come up with these policies. So if not, we'll put it on our next agenda item for a second reading. And we are on to the housekeeping part of the program, which is item number 7, which is the approval of January 2nd and January 5th, 2017 minutes. Do I have a motion to accept the January 2nd minutes? Made by Andy. Do I have a second? Seconded by Naomi. Are there any edits to the January 2nd meeting minutes? Seeing none, we'll put the January 2nd meeting minutes to a vote. We will forego the roll call because Mike Thompson has left the meeting. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none. The motion carries 4-0-0. Do I have a motion to accept the January 5th, 2017 meeting minutes? Made by Naomi. Do I have a second? Seconded by Cinda. Are there any edits to those meeting minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none. The motion carries 4-0-0. On to item number 8, which is other. A, correspondence. Is there correspondence to come before the board? I did get one from Quantum Construction. They just wanted to let us know about a plan in the fall to work on the bridge on Bedford Road over Babusick Brook. And knowing that we may have some district impact, if you have any questions or concerns, we can get back to them on that. I think it's definitely going to be more of a transportation thing. So our administration will work with them and address any concerns or open dialogue as appropriate. No other correspondence? Are there comments? Mark?
I just want to mention that on Thursday, January 19th, Merrimack Safeguard is going to be hosting a community forum the purpose of which is to inform parents and community about the different ways that various helpers in our district support a healthy and drug-free community. And it'll be at the O'Leary Center from 6 to 8 p.m. And we really look forward to having people come. And we've got some interesting speakers. And it's really going to be a nice dialogue, I think. So we just would encourage people to come to the O'Leary Center on Thursday night.
Thank you. And just a question, is it good for youth and parents, or is it more of
Yes.
a... Excellent.
Yep.
Excellent. So I do have one comment as well. Just wanted to let you know that our principal at Reed's Ferry, Kimberly Yarlott, has earned the New Hampshire Elementary School Principal of the Year Award for 2017. She will be receiving the distinction at the Eddie Awards in June. So we are riding high with some very distinguished honors. This year is no exception. I think a few of us have been fortunate to have Kim as our kids' principal. So firsthand, we definitely know all that she does in our district, and even through our work at the board. And she was the only one healthy to present, but she, of course, did a wonderful job. So we are just very happy that she won this award, and look forward to celebrating her later in the year. I think last year when we had the award winners, we had their school come after they won the award, and if the calendar affords it, we will have Reed's Ferry come to present their year at a glance after the Eddies.
I would just add, and when she finishes with the Eddie Awards in June, she will be so honored in Washington in October. And so that will even be a bigger honor because she'll be one of 50 in the United States.
Oh, fantastic. So we look forward to hearing more about that trip as well. So, but we're very proud of her accomplishments in our district, and want to acknowledge tonight, because the press release may have gone out already, so we want to make sure that we as a board congratulate her appropriately. So kudos to Mrs. Yarlott. On to item number 9, which is new business. Is there any new business to come before the board? Seeing none, we will close new business. And on to item number 10, which is committee reports. Andy.
So just really quick report. Last Thursday? Thursday, I can't, it's a blur, I don't know what today is. Last Thursday, there was a meeting of the Ceresc Board of Directors in Bedford. Topics that we discussed included looking at different ways to be able to handle the catering at the Ceresc Event Center, and also to sort of talk about the financial status and the building status for the Ceresc. Sort of as we've explained in the past, there's the event center as well as the consulting business that it does to the districts. And the Board of Directors is looking at ways to sort of evolve back more into the core business of doing sort of contracting, consulting work to the districts, and sort of remove itself from the event center aspect of the business. So there'll be more to come over the coming months as we get closer. So.
Thank you. So we're on to item number 11, which is, is there another committee report? I'm sorry. I didn't see another hand.
Oh, that's okay. 2 committee reports briefly. The first one would be, I recently went to a communications committee meeting. We reviewed some of the results from the survey. More to come. We'll bring more of that information back to the board in some upcoming sessions. We also did some brainstorming sessions about kind of, low-hanging fruit, what good communication looks like, and whatnot. We divided into groups based on the level, the various elementary, middle school, high school is how we divide it up. Also, I went to a PERC meeting, and we discussed, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, it was about an algebra class that we were going to basically put out there for students that are struggling, specifically freshmen that were struggling through the first semester of algebra, that would basically put some of those students together to help them meet the rubrics, help them be successful, provide them with support, as well as some additional supports around study skills and whatnot. It was approved for 1 year only by PERC to be reevaluated in the future, but it was something that would go into effect this year.
Okay, so sorry about that, did not see your hand. So any other committee reports? Seeing none, we will now go on to item number 11, which is public comments on agenda items. Seeing none, we will close public comments, and we will take a moment to sign the manifest, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Andy? And seconded by Cinda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none. The motion carries 4-0-0. Thank you and good night.